Hi, my name's Steve Bullock, Guitar Moog. I'm the guitarist in the Vanity Drones, and I'm here in self-isolation in the attic of my house, and have been for some time, and will be for a while yet, I think, with a mild case of COVID-19, but it's been very mild and I'm recovering well. I did a video a few weeks ago about my pedal board and how I use it in the Vanity Drones, and a few people had asked me about the guitar that I use in the Vanity Drones and that I used in that demo, and they asked me to explain a little bit about it because it's quite a special and kind of inspiring instrument. So here we are. So the guitar is an Ed O'Brien EOB Fender Strat. Ed O'Brien, as you almost certainly know, is the guitarist from Radiohead. He also has a solo album coming out, I think, in a few days on the 17th. And from what I've read, this guitar was based on his Eric Clapton signature Strat, which they'd modded quite a bit, mainly adding a Fernandes Sustainer and a different bridge pickup to it. And if you watch footage of Radiohead, Ed is almost always using either a Strat or he's using a Rickenbacker, but occasionally he uses other guitars, but he seems to flip between those two mainly. And what he said, there's some brilliant videos on this out there, not least from Fender and from Ed himself. Some very good videos. Now, in fact, the initial one that he made with Fender, which is I think about 10 minutes long, you should really go and watch because it's in itself it's an amazing bit of video. But when he's talking about it, he said that he wanted something that would do what his modified Strat would do, and that he wanted it to be fairly accessible, which it is. It's made in Mexico, and it's a little bit over 1,000 euros, so much cheaper than the most of the American series, a little bit more than the classic or Vintera series, as they call it now. But it's quite a special guitar in a few ways. So I thought I'd just show you a little bit about what's special about it and how it works, and then I'll talk a little bit about how I use it and give some examples of how I use it in the Vanity Drones. So the first thing to know about it is that it's a Strat. It has 3 single coil sized pickups, although only 2 are single coil. It has a Strat control layout, although the controls don't work in the same way. And it has a classic small Strat headstock. The Fender split shaft tuners, which I really like. They're my favorite tuners, and I have generally put locking tuners on stuff that doesn't already have them. And a really interesting thing about it is the neck. So the neck shape was, I think, an adaptation of his Eric Clapton signature Strats, which have a V-neck, and this has V-neck as well, but the V softens off very, very considerably by, around the 7th, 9th, 10th frets, to the point where when you get to the 12th fret, it's really not a V-neck at all. It's a really deep U shape, or maybe a deep D would be a better description at that point. But it's a really thick neck, and I was really surprised when I first played it, and I thought I'd never get used to it, but I actually have. And everybody talks about, all the vintage guys talk about how having a really big, thick neck really adds to the sustaining sound. And I have to say, I'm not a Strat person, I'm a Tele person, and I've really bonded with this. And one of the reasons, I don't know whether it does actually contribute to the sound or not, but I've had several Strats, and this is the only one that I've really got on with, and I've much more than got on with it. I use it every day. So I put some pics up of the neck, and if you see when this picture is looking at it here. You can see that when the neck transfers from the flat part where it goes into the neck pocket into the rounded part, you can see that there's virtually no change between the depth of it between those two bits. Now normally you get a big change there, a big dip, because the neck would be thinner. And again, at the if we look at it side on at the top where it goes into the headstock, again you can see that the taper as it goes into the headstock is nowhere near as sharp as it is on most necks. So this is a really, really, really thick neck, and if you compare it to, I've taken for reference my made in Japan 70s telly, which is a shallow C neck. And you compare it to a shallow C neck, you can actually see the difference between them, which it's pretty hard to see neck shapes normally, but the difference is so marked you'll probably be able to see that. The other thing, it has the frets are unusual as well. It has tall, thin frets, so they're not like jumbo frets, you know, Gibson style. They're very tall and very thin, just like, let's say, on the box. And this is a little weird at first to deal with because it looks like you have a high action because the strings are a long way from the fingerboard, but they're not a long way from the tops of the frets. And I think I've got two pictures here I can show you, and this one is the Ed O'Brien Strat, and this one is the telly from the same angle. And you can see that the EOB Strat looks like it's got a much higher action than the telly. And actually I set up all my guitars to pretty much the same spec, and have measurements that I go for written down, and these have pretty much the same spec action on them, even though one looks like it's much higher. So it's not. So that takes a little bit of, it really, you wouldn't think that this would make a huge difference, but it takes a little bit of getting used to. But it has a big advantage because you're really miles away from the fingerboard, so it allows you to be expressive without really going anywhere near the fingerboard and not getting any drag off it, you know. I use lacquered maple fingerboards all the time, and it doesn't bother me. But I know for some people, it really bothers them. Control-wise, the three-way switch, the five-way switch is a standard five-way switch. But you'll notice that that there isn't a jack socket here. The jack socket's on the side, and it's been replaced by these controls, which are for the Sustainer. And this control here, if you flick that up, that turns the Sustainer on. And this one switches between it sustaining the root note, a combination of a harmonic and the root note in the middle, and a harmonic, basically an octave above, in the last position. And then the volume and tones work that it has a master volume here and a master tone. But this one, which I think is very cool actually, they didn't put a tone knob on it, they put a volume knob on it, is center indented and is a blend between, is a volume control for the Sustainer output. So how the Sustainer works is that it takes, when you turn the Sustainer on, it switches immediately to the bridge pickup. And the reason it has a Seymour Duncan Little 59, is it a Little 59 here? I think it's a Little 59, which is quite high output, single coil sized humbucker, is that it needs to have a high output pickup at the bridge for the Sustainer to work well. And Ed O'Brien says they tested lots and lots of pickups and found that this was one that worked really well. The middle one, incidentally, is just a standard Texas Special. And the Sustainer, and this is a Sustainer pickup, so you can either use this as a bridge pickup when this switches off, and it works as a pickup. Looks fine as a pickup, and so does the back pickup. And you can get stratty tones in the middle position. And the middle positions aren't as stratty as you might think because of the blend of pickups. Position 2 and position 4. There's still a bit of that thin. A bit of that kind of thin in between sound to it, but it's not nearly as pronounced as on a Strat with three standard single coils. So when you flick the sustainer on, it takes the output of the bridge pickup and it feeds it to the bridge pickup, the neck pickup, which, like an EBO, creates an electromagnetic pulse which mechanically works on the strings to keep them sustaining. And this creates an energy feedback loop because the string sustaining is feeding energy back into this pickup, which is feeding energy back into this, which is causing more energy, which is feeding energy back to the string to sustain it. So if I demonstrate it, we'll just use it on the standard root note setting. With it off, I play a D. Completely normal kind of sustain you'd expect from a good Strat with a fat neck, because I mean it sustains. It's got great sustain for a Strat, and I'm using the tremolo floating as well, and it's at quite an angle because I'm doing that trick where it goes up 3 semitones on the G string, 2 semitones on the B string, and 1 semitone on the E string. Or close to that anyway. So that's a normal D on the second on the 5th string. If I turn the sustainer on, you hear the difference. You can actually hear the sustain, and that's infinite. That'll go on for as long as you like, because there's an energy feedback loop though. There's very little energy being lost there. And there's power from the battery as well, so there's energy being added to that circuit. It's not a passive circuit; it's an active circuit. Now you can hear there that when I change notes, it gets a little bit quieter because there's energy being taken out when you change notes, and not being put back in with the pick to make the string vibrate. So it'll sustain effectively infinitely if you don't change fret. If you slide between frets, it'll keep going, but you'll lose a bit of volume. If you're using, we'll come to compressors and gain and stuff later. And if you're using that, then it doesn't really matter nearly so much. You can use that really effectively. And I don't really use the middle position very much. I don't find it's hugely useful because it's quite hard to hear the harmonic, and you lose quite a lot of sustain overall from using it for some reason, particularly in the fundamental. But here's the harmonic setting, which I use quite a lot. Now you can hear there at the beginning the signal from the sustainer circuit takes over from the dry signal from the pickup. You have the dry signal from the pickup, bridge pickup. If we add in the sustainer, just listen to how it takes a little bit of time, and then you hear a slightly fuzzier sustainer. It's got a little bit of hair around the edges. And then with the fundamental setting, So it's fantastically expressive, and you shouldn't only think about this guitar as a specialist guitar for weird stuff. It's a really good Strat, and the Sustainer has lots and lots of uses for sort of what you might call normal playing. I'm going to look at what it can really do, how I use it to make ambient stuff. But it's really not just for that. There's a few things that are really, really useful to have that sustain. I mean, for example, it's a really obvious one, but my band does Heroes by David Bowie. It also does absolutely tremendous. I mean, obviously playing Radiohead on it sounds great because it's the guitar that was used for a lot of Radiohead parts. I always love the intro to Airbag using that. Another really nice trick that you can do with it in normal guitar playing is it gives you instant feedback if you want it, which is just amazing fun to add to the ends of phrases and build up to choruses and stuff like that. So if you had a bit of gain to it. Which is absolutely enormously good fun. We never get to play loud like we'd love to. That really wasn't loud in the room, by the way. I'm going through my pedal board, which you can see the video about, an HX Stomp set on a clean amp and some drive pedals, and into a tiny little Jazz Chorus 22 here. So it really wasn't very loud. It really wasn't loud in the room at all. You've got instant controllable feedback there, which is just, which is really great fun. And obviously it's great for, kind of pseudo synth-type parts as well. What do I use it for? Switches here makes it really, really easy just to grab them and switch them. So yeah, it's a great versatile Strat, whichever way you look at it. But it's been particularly good and inspirational for me doing ambient stuff. So I'm going to do a bit of a walkthrough of the kind of things and kind of sounds that I use it for and why this is particularly really good for those kind of sounds. So one thing I missed out of the previous part, which has been really interesting for me, is that this will sustain, how the Sustainer works with chords. So this is an completely analog system. There's no digital wizardry in this. It simply works on energy in and energy out. So what it tends to do when you play a chord and you turn the Sustainer on is it, as far as I can tell, it takes the note or notes with the most energy in them and sustains those and lets the other ones die naturally. So if I play it and then turn it on, don't know what note it's going to be, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I bought it thinking that for some reason notes would just sustain like a synth or an organ, chords would just sustain like a synth or an organ, and I was kind of disappointed when they didn't, and I've actually found it much more creative that they don't, because there's a fantastic element of unpredictability about it. So it tends to sustain the notes with the most energy, which tend to be the low notes because they're thicker strings and have more at a lower. They're vibrating at. They have more mass, and therefore have more string energy to put into the system. But of course, you can play and then release one of those, which is what I did in the last chord, and then another one will take over. And then if you add what I find particularly amazing is adding the octave and doing this. And now, if you watched my pedalboard walkthrough that I did the other week, you'll know that generally things are pretty drenched in delay and reverb, or delay and reverb. So if you add a good amount of delay and reverb to that, then you get some quite lovely sounds. To that, rolling it in with a volume or with a volume pedal. I'll use the volume because the volume pedal's out of shot here. Reverb tells, and because the switches are so easy to access, you can just bring this in at any time, So if you're playing it's that even more sustained with another delay here, a really sustaining delay as well. You can really just bring it in whenever you want. So I do this a lot when I'm improvising ambient stuff, or looking for backing pads with the band. When we're playing big chords with big kind of string pads and stuff like that. You can really bring this in for that sense that there's an ensemble playing and one of the instruments is moving while the others sustain. I've talked about this in a few of my videos, but I really like having having movement happening within these big reverby atmospheric sounds. You know, if it just goes, you know, imagine an organ without the Leslie, with the Leslie on stop. If you just play a chord on that, you can sustain it forever. There's nothing remarkable about an instrument being able to sustain endlessly. What's interesting is about how the sound moves in that, I think. So yeah, if you listen to this with a big shimmer reverb on it as well, and I'll add this, we're using this with the harmonic. Yeah. And they're just, you know, these are just kind of sounds that I wouldn't have really found without this guitar. Ed O'Brien said when he made it, he wanted it to be obtainable, and he wanted people to grab it and go off and find out what it could do and make their own experimental stuff with it. And that's, you know, that's really exactly what I've done since I got it, and it's been a really inspirational guitar like that. Another kind of trick with it is to do what I always think of cello parts. If you leave some reverb on, but maybe take the delay off. Let's use a kind of slightly deeper reverb than that. I'll give a better representation of it. That's actually the whole algorithm on a 9-knob immerse, it's just an amazing algorithm. I really love this. So what you can do using a volume pedal or using the volume control is you can go and get these kind of cello sounds. And the nice thing about it is you heard earlier that the Sustainer has a sort of hairy edge to it, and this is really useful. You know, again, at first I thought that's a bit weird, you know, it's really not a very clean sound. But then when you use it, you really find that you get a little bit of the sense, especially on lower notes, you get a bit of a sense of a bow being on the string. You know, if you listen to a solo cello recording, a huge amount of the sound is actually the sound of the bow on the string, not just the resulting vibration, not just the vibration of the string that results from that. And the same with, you hear it a bit less with violins, but certainly the same with violas. So with a bit of swelling, again, we'll just go back to a really simple note. And we're not on the octave setting here, we're on the fundamental setting. And that's where another nice thing about this guitar comes in, is that the tone control is really worthwhile. I'm in my covers band playing rock. I'm one of these people who almost never touches the tone control, but I touch the tone control on this all the time, because you can really change the character of those kind of notes and really make them. It's not just darker and lighter. It's also this sort of amount of edge that's on it's the quality of the sound as well as the tone of it. If I turn it right down and do the same kind of thing. So I'm tapping the strings. You have to tap it because of the way that it works with the cycle of energy that I was talking about. You need to put energy into the system. So when you tap the strings, you need to tap them hard, or the sustain won't work, or you need to pick them. Normally, I would use a volume pedal for this kind of stuff, so you can see what's happening. I'm using the volume control instead. So now you hear it with the tone control right up. You start to really hear the bow on it. This responds really nice. I've got this running through a compressor and a little EP booster, just because I like the sound of it, and the compressor for a bit of extra gain and evenness. But if I put a bit of drive on it, so the boost side of the D&M drive, then it brings out even more of that character. Now, of course, there's nothing amazing about doing volume swells. People have been doing volume swells for years and years, but it really helps that kind of thing, having the sustainer there and having the extra, having the option of the extra octave is really I find really pretty amazing. So I think that's all I wanted to say about it. I just want to explain how it worked. One thing I would say is that if you open the back up, if you go to the Fernandes website, Fernandes who make the Sustainer system, you go to their website and you can find the instruction booklet for the Sustainer system. Actually, if you take this little back plate off, there's a circuit board inside that has 4 trim pots. And 2 of the trim, I think there should be a picture on screen now. And 2 of the trim pots are really important. One of them is the output volume for the Sustainer system, which needs to be up high, pretty much on full if you can, without getting nasty sounds, which apparently some people get. I have mine on full. But also there's a rise time, I think it's a vibration control they call it. So when I got this, you'd play the sustainer and you'd turn the sustainer on and you'd play a note and you'd wait and you'd wait and you'd wait, and it would take a long time for the sustained note to come. And then the sustained note wouldn't be as high a volume as the main signal had been. And you'd get this kind of thing of the 2 curves going like this. So you get a dip in volume before you got the sustained volume coming up. But when I found the instruction booklet and found that you can adjust these pots, as you can hear, if I turn the effects off, the rise time isn't particularly fast anyway. It does take a bit of time. It does take a bit of time to get going. There you go. So I've set that to its fastest setting, and it warns you that uses batteries quick, and it does use batteries quick. I have a set of 3 9-volt batteries, rechargeable ones, which I rotate, and I would put a new one in for every rehearsal or for every gig, and if I'm just at home playing, they tend to get changed every couple of days. I mean, this is a brand new one that's in a newly charged one that's in now. So it does use a lot of battery power doing that, but I really think it's worth it. Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to play you some more stuff, and you'll be able to see when I bring the Sustainer in and out, and hopefully be able to see when I use the octave. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been useful, and thanks very much for watching. Thanks a lot. Follow, subscribe, click the little bell, all those things. Thanks very much. Hope that was useful. Bye bye.